Hello, 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 hello. So this week, Cory Wong released his new album called Lost in the Wonder, on which I have two tracks. One's called Afterglow and the other one is called The Big Payoff. Today, I thought we'd run through how me and Cory made The Big Payoff. It was produced and written by me and Cory, but there's a ton of amazing, world-class musicians on this song. Let me crack open the credits quick. So you got Cory on guitar, obviously. I'm on the keys and doing some backing vocals. You got Sonny Thompson on the bass, who's just an absolute beast. Michael Bland on the drums. Kevin Gastonguay on the keyboards, as well as Alex Bone. You got Kenny Holman on saxophone, clarinet, and flute. Jay Webb on trumpet, and Michael Nelson on the trombone. Let's dive into it. Okay, so we are in the very first sketch. So this is what I created like a month before I met Cory, and I kind of just reached a roadblock with it, and I was like, I don't know where I want this to go, but it sounds kind of cool. And once we hopped in the studio together, I was like, look, I think this could be like a really sick song for us to work on together. And we did it. I'm just going to play through this now so you guys can kind of hear where the first idea came from. Goes back to the verse, and then it goes into this. She's got that lovely chord change in it. So yeah, it's kind of got the original identity of the song, but it's just missing a lot, and it kind of mostly missing a direction. So let's start running through some of these elements. It's just being sent to a delay there. But then you've got a wider bass on top of that. But what makes this interesting is I actually just played in the bass line on my P bass as well, and just used the transient from the pick to layer it, and you kind of get this hybrid sound already. This thing just brings out the bite. It's really good on picked basses. So if you layer that with these two, you're off to the races, you know what I mean? Once that bass line was in there, you get this cool little pluck that comes in. There's a ton of processing going on this one, but the original source sound is the trusty ESP from Logic. It almost kind of sounds like a guitar because it's so plucked and palm muted. So the first thing we've got on it is this M vibrato, which isn't doing a lot. It's like 4% of tape wobble, essentially. OTT, decimal, which just adds a little bit of noise. The best compressor in the world, Wolf compressor. Sample delay, which is just the Haas effect. It's just delaying the left signal to make it sound stereo. Chuck a Valhalla room on there. Very short room reverb. Slap delay. Vintage verb. And a sidechain. Sometimes, in my opinion, the most raw, organic synth sounds just end up sounding the best, especially in this sort of music. You just don't need to overcomplicate it. It's more about how you use the instruments and the spacing more than anything. And then these drums here, this is just like a disco drum bus. I don't think we ended up using these. We'll see in the later projects, but this was just more of a let's get the vibe down and we'll go from there. Just a classic disco beat. Kick, 606 hi-hat. And then you got this, which stayed in the project too. Just a tonal thing. And then you got some of these stems that were exported from an even older project. There's a lot of this sort of stuff in this song where it's just one note on like a different synthesizer or an ARP or something, and they all kind of play off each other, and you get this cool polyrhythm. They're all doing very slightly different things, but they're not playing crazy melodies or anything. They're almost acting as a rhythmic part, I suppose. So there's your verse. So the interesting thing about this chord progression is it's in C minor, but instead of going from the C minor 7 as the first chord, we go to the C major 7, and you get this kind of weird jazzy feeling. Just 2 chords. But that first chord feels really special because it's kind of within context of everything else that's going on. The verse really feels like it's in C minor. And as soon as the chorus comes in, it opens up into this major chord. Bit of CS80 doing that. Got this bendy synth. Some Rhodes. Another Rhodes. Atmosphere. And then in the B section, it's the only time you really hear the chord progression change. And it's kind of like a breath of fresh air because you've been hearing the C, especially on the bass and in the chorus, for the whole song until this hits. And you're like, oh, where did this come from? So this, you go into the F, and then it goes to this really fun slash chord here, which is A flat over B flat. And then you've got my crappy guitars, which did not make the final cut because we're working with Cory Wong. But, you know, it served purpose for the demo. I have no idea if that stayed in the project. So there you go. That was the main idea that I showed to Cory, and we were like, cool, let's just grab some of those stems, drag them into a new project, and we just started jamming. All right, so this is the project that we worked on in the first session together. So let's dive in. Obviously, you've got the basses here that we just went through. And then in the studio that we were in, there was a Prophet, which is always fun. Obviously, that stayed in. When you've got analog synths, you just kind of have way too much fun and get a bit carried away. Got these bass chops here, which kind of sounds Justice-esque. They're just chopped and sampled in a way that sounds like a sample, but they were played in. You've got this thing here, which the bass transient was just not poking through in the mix for some reason. So we layered it with this. It's just a little percussion sample, I guess. The drums. So this is not the final project with the live drums in, but this is the drums that a lot of these did end up staying in the final project. So standard, like 4 to the floor beat really, but it's already got that live element in there with the disco breaks on top. And here you go. Absolutely nothing going on with the processing on the guitar. It's just straight in. It's going through a Wolf compressor. But to get that kind of disco-y Stratocaster sound, a lot of the time it is just go DI straight into the desk, bit of compression, maybe a bit of EQ. You don't need to use any amps, really. That's how a lot of the old disco songs were recorded. No quantization whatsoever on this. It's just Cory playing it straight in. A lot of these stems, I'm going to have to try and remember where they came from. But there was so many synthesizers in this studio that we were just jumping on everything and just playing anything because it was fun. So here's one of them. Here's another one. Unreal. You've got a microwave bell sound in here. When the microwave's done, you get the ping. They're fun. So there's quite a lot of atmospheres and stuff going on here. That's like a vocal sample. One of my favorite instruments in the world is the Selena. It's so simple, but it just brings me so much joy listening to it. And it was my first time ever having to go on a real one. So there's Selena all over this song. It might just sound like a string to you, but that is a Selena string. We've got another Selena here. Which is just a lower one. You got these piano chords. Pretty standard stuff. CS80. Rhodes. And that vocal synth. So this was, I think this was the CS80 as well, that we just chopped up to kind of sound a bit samply. Filter on it, Daft Punk filter, mate. Comb filter. Air windows. I think I've shown you this plugin before, but it's kind of emulating what the SP1200 would sound like, that bit crushed sound. Profit, here we go. Just a drone. Because we could. There we go. Second chorus, a lot more comes in. Okay, so let's run through some of these instruments. You've got a Mellotron. The studio had a Mellotron. Had so much fun with it again. So here's the Mellotron. Super vintage sound. Just playing a little melody. Another Selena. All of this stuff from the first chorus, and then you've got this thing called Piano Interstellar, which is what Cory played in. It just reminded us of the Interstellar soundtrack. It might just sound like 3 notes, but in context with all the chords, it just sounds magical. Oof. Beautiful. And then you've got a Celesta, which is just playing the exact same melody as the piano. Just adds a bit of more of that high-end frequency information, just so you can hear it in the mix. Motown drums being filtered up. This was all replayed by Michael Bland. Sonar. Juno. What's this? So much of this song is just everything playing one note, and it's the C, but it just seems to work. If you've watched any of my videos before, you'll know I absolutely love this plugin. So Cory wrote most of this section here. Kind of just let him do his thing, really. And then we hopped on the Juno because, yes, there was also a Juno in the room, and played this bad boy. I believe this was also replayed. A go-go's. A lot of these stems just ended up moving over to the second chorus in the final project, as there's only 2 choruses really. There's kind of the payoff moment in the final project, which has a lot of the chorus elements, but this is the essentially the second chorus. So one of my favorite elements in this song, which adds a lot, is the vocal pads, which is yours truly. So have a listen to these. And if you listen to them in context with the musical elements, so this is just me. Look, there's obviously tuning on this. I'm not a great singer. It's just me singing pretty much every note of the chord. And I think like Air, the band Air used to do this, and it just has this really lush sound on the ears, especially when you've got a nice chord progression that's really sustained. This just fills out all of the fizzly top end as well. Not a lot of crazy processing, but they obviously just sounded good in the mix and we just left them. Okay, so you got this, which to me sounds like the Prophet drone, and then you've got the exact same thing underneath, but it's pitching down. Some more percussions, claps, shakers, go-go's. And that's basically it. You've got the outro as well. All of this was replayed by Sonny. Yeah, so that's what we walked away with from day one, basically. And Cory then took all of the stems to record all of his band. And there's a video of that on his YouTube channel if you want to go and check that out. It's a lot of fun. And then the stems were sent back to me, and now I'll crack open that project. This one is where the song really started to shape up into what it is. You can see up here, like I've even got markers because this is where all of the new sections were kind of put in. This is where most of the stems from the band were sent to me, and I was trying to fuse them together as best as I could. You can hear the live bass in there now and the live drums. Okay, cool. Let's start at the top with the drums. So these are the live drums soloed from Michael Bland. So there's a lot of bits here. You can see that certain fills are chopped out and put on their own channel. This is because the main live drums that glue with the electric drums are EQ'd quite heavily, like there's no low end, and we're using delta, which essentially is gluing it together even more. It's using the signal from the snare and basically distorting the live drums ever so slightly. You can kind of hear that crunch happening. So you've got fresh air. This is just bringing out some of the hi-hats in the top end. Just getting rid of the fundamental from the snare there, just because our program snare is handling a lot of that information. And then also just there must have been too much high end happening around here. Shaper box. This might look crazy, but this is just me making tweaks just so it fits nicely with the electric drum kit. So without this, if you listen to the kick drum, it's just being softened slightly. So nothing's really happening in this top end. It's more in this low range here. We're just doing a really short curve, just at like halfway, just to kind of duck out some of the low end from the transient of the kick and the live drums. You've got another sidechain happening here, which is actually just doing the same thing, but just more extreme, more on the subs. So there's your like main live drums, and then your fills are kind of just left alone here. Sounds so good. You can really hear the crunch happening there. So there's your live drums. So if you put the drums electronic bus with the drums live bus, this is what we get. Super sick. So one thing I've just completely forgot to mention is that I spent a whole day editing every single transient so that it fit with our original drums, and it was very tedious. But if you get a transient that isn't lining up, it just doesn't sound right. To get it to gel perfectly, they have to be essentially playing the exact same thing. You can see all of these little cuts here. This was all done by hand, and it took a long time, but it's totally worth it. You've got a ride and a bottle as well. So this is some live percussion that Cory recorded. Sounds like a cowbell and some other stuff. Tambourine. And this is one of my favorite parts of the whole song. Oh, it's so good. That payoff, excuse the pun, is beautiful. Obviously, all the guitars are from Cory, as I'm sure you're aware. There was way more keys parts added from the band. So let's have a quick listen through. These crazy analog synthesizers, man. Really fun stuff. This is the Junos that were replayed in, and I just added in this, I guess, little fill from a VST Juno, which wasn't recorded, but I just thought sounded cool. You can hear the noise in there as well. All right, let's move on to the bass. So the bass was played by Sonny Thompson, and this is what it sounds like. It's so thumpy. So sick. This is where it really starts to shine over here. It's incredible bass playing. So basically nothing was done to this other than a bit of sidechain on the low end and letting the top end breathe. Now, one thing here that I would have usually done on another project is kind of remove the low end from either one of the basses and kind of let either the synth or the real bass have the sub frequencies essentially. But in this, we just left the sub frequencies in both of them. It just sounded good. So because he's also playing the octave lower, which really helps. Yeah, on the bass, the only thing I did was in the bridge, I just very slightly nudged a few things or just like cut off some of the tails. Something that's really cool over here. Oh. That's crazy. No, that's all him. That's like, I don't know what pedals he's using, but that is super, super sick. So on top of that, just to accentuate that moment and make it really its own thing, I duplicated his bass over to this channel. Just added this dirty layer on top. So, going through thermal. Tape dust from air windows. This flanger. Getting rid of the low end. Sidechain it. EQ it. Layer it in. And then another synth as well. And you just get the biggest monster of a bass. So there you have it. That's our kind of main project. The next project I have has all of the horns in and just some very minor mix adjustments. So let's dive into that one. As you can see, as the song goes on and gets more progressed, we cut the amount of tracks down. So now we're down to 38 tracks. We just keep consolidating it as we go. So we've got like all the atmospheres together, all of the basses. There's just one clav moment that happens over here, which I'll just show you quickly. But it's super sick. All of the electronic drums, all the live drums, all of the electric bass, I don't know what this is. Let's get rid of that. And then down here, this is where like all of the horns were added. So Cory recorded all of the horns with his horn people, I guess. And yeah, I just chucked them in, and I just kind of muted a few bits just because I felt like the horns were coming in too early. The horns make such a big difference to this song because there's no vocal. Like there is kind of a little gap that was missing, and I kind of just trusted Cory and his intuition because he was like, it doesn't need a vocal. Let me get my horn section on it. I was like, do you think, brother? And literally, he was right. So we'll start here with the wind bus. So you got some flutes. So this all comes in the first chorus. So let me just solo the keys bus with this. So they're playing the same melody that the mellotron was playing. Yeah, you got the clarinets. Bass clarinet as well. Just magical, isn't it? Can't take credit for this at all. This is Cory's magic of horn arranging. I wouldn't even know where to start, but I'm just very grateful that he was able to add this magic to the song. Got the brass bus. There's a sample for you guys. So you got two trumpets, a tenor and a baritone. That's some funky horns right there. Second brass bus. What do we got here? Bit of soothe on that one. Brass can get really harsh really quick, especially when it starts to get stacked up. So just controlling some of those frequencies. So cool. And then you've got the soft brass, which is one of my favorite sounds. So this in the chorus is where the horns are like, there they are. I absolutely love that melody, especially in context with the keys. So pretty. And the soft brass comes in here again. Makes me want to cry. I love it. There you go. That is how you go from such a rough, basically bedroom demo straight into a studio with Cory Wong, and then you get this sick demo out of it. And then he's like, hang on, let me get a band on it. Now it's even sicker. Hang on, let me get a horn section on it. Now it's sick. You know what I mean? So it's proof that if you kind of stick with a track and show it the love and give it all of the attention it needs and throw some of the world's best musicians at it, that you can get something really fun out of it. So I hope that was useful, because for me, I learned a lot by making this song and kind of seeing how somebody else works who isn't from a pop environment, who isn't from an EDM background. So it's a completely fresh perspective for me, and it was super sick and an honor to work with all of these people. So I hope that video was helpful, guys. Until next time.